let's take corporate boards for an example. And I'm talking about larger corporations, obviously not the small businesses or consumer spending or anything like that. When you look at how corporate boards distribute profit, they do buybacks, they do profit sharing, they find ways to carve up whatever that profit is so that everybody gets a slice of that pie. Workers can only benefit through wages. Every now and again, they'll get shares in a company or they'll get certain things. Why is it that for workers, it's required that it's incumbent upon themselves to create a movement to then go into why isn't it the status quo that they sit on those boards and that they share in the same way that somebody who's on the board would share or somebody who's a stockholder? Why do we have stockholder and shareholder capitalism, but not, why aren't the workers included in that? Do you know?
Oh, that's the way the law is organized. That's the way corporate law is organized. If you incorporate, you start a business, that's about the legal system in some sense. And you could say, well, where did the legal system come from? Well, the legal system was written by economic elites or people who could influence policymakers.
So that can be changed. And it wouldn't be disastrous. Clara is about to jump out of her library, so I'm gonna. She's about to pull hair and books off and do that. Hey, Clara, do you want to answer that?
I just want to say that the legal system is not separable from the political economy we're discussing, right? And so I think this is really the difference in method here, is that I'm trying to say that actually capitalism is an animal that has all of these elements to it, the political, the legal, they're part of the economic. And to understand the economic, you can't separate, right? So this separation is already for me very ideological, because it tends to say, okay, so the problem is not the economy, the problem is the law, the problem is this other thing.
They work together to suppress, right?
Of course. And historically, how did capitalism come into being? With the enclosure of the commons, right? And the enclosure in the commons is all about taking away subsistence means of people and transforming land into a commodity that then was appropriated by the elite, right? So in the way, without the law, this first step that you're talking about, which is the fact that very few control the means of production and actually get to make decisions about how something is produced and how it's distributed, this requires a certain legal backing, right? There would be no capitalism without a specific law. Again, the law comes from the state. And we go back to the point of saying the state is constantly intervening to protect the market.